Hello everyone. This hour on Verbling, the next in my Getting Results in Business series, we are on our 14th unit out of 16 total units in Getting Results in Business. The new unit is all about business culture. In this unit, you will discuss different cultural beliefs and values. You will practice the language of narrating past events and review the relevant past tense grammar to talk about your experiences in a different culture. In the final case study, at the end of the unit, you are faced with a situation which requires a good level of intercultural awareness to solve a problem. And that is a little bit about the class. Now a little bit about me. I'm John Eric, your Verbling teacher for this hour. I'm an American teacher from New York, hanging out in Lisbon, Portugal to bring you this class. By the way, here are 3 quick rules to help you participate. Don't forget to turn off, tune in, and open up. That means when you're not speaking, turn off your microphone so we can keep the classroom as quiet as possible. When you are speaking, tune in to the new words and the new expressions that you're learning so that I can correct you and give you feedback. Last, open up to your classmates. Relax and have fun. We're all here to learn, and this is a safe and respectful place to practice your English. And that is a little bit about me. What I'm going to do now is share my screen with you so you can see the material. As you know, underneath the green join button, you've got the video window. And down there, beneath the description on the video window, you have our notes. That's where you can find everything you need for the class. So let's put those in the chat window in case you need them. When you open them, it takes you to this page, Getting Results in Business. Okay? So, all of our material will always be in this document. I'm going to scroll down. You see where we are, Unit 14, you are here. Get to the table of contents, Unit 14. You can either click on this or just go to the next page because right now everything is there. In each class, I like to do a little summary. So let's do that for this class too. I ask 3 questions. What did we do? So what? Why was it important? Now what? What can we do to improve it for the next time? So let's just summarize the last class with those same points. By the way, if there's anyone having trouble getting in the classroom, just write a little note in the chat window and I'll try to help. But I think everything's working okay today. Oops, that's not what I want to do. That's what I want to do. Let's move this down a little bit. Okay, so a little summary before we do anything else. Yesterday, we did some brainstorming. So we brainstormed about the topic of culture and how it affected us and business. A little bit. We generated some vocabulary and identified the main topics that we're going to talk about. So what? Why did we do that? Well, basically, you should have a better idea of the type of subjects that make up culture, such as we talked about body language, talked about, remember, we're talking about this as doing business and how it affects business. religion, body language, religion, appearance, and clothes, language, of course, regular language. All of those things will go in to, I'm just wondering why no one's entering the classroom. Maybe there's a problem, so let me just double check that there's no issue here. I'll be right back. Maybe there's a problem. Okay, so I just restarted the class because I think some people were having trouble entering the classroom. Okay, so let me reopen the notes and just finish the summary, and feel free to come in. If there's any problems entering, just write a note in the chat window, okay? And I'll try to see what I can do to fix it. If I can fix it, I'll try, okay? So let me share the screen again. And there you go. When you click on the link in the top of the chat window or in the class material, it takes you here. At the moment this is open, I'll open a presentation for today. Give me just a second to open this. Wow, it's a little bit slow. Okay, there we go. So let's go down to page 6. Okay, there we go. And I'll open the presentation in the background and let it load. When I finish the summary, it'll be ready to go. Okay, so we did a little brainstorming. We had some vocabulary. Now, what do you have to do? Well, yesterday, you didn't have to do anything. We just began. So I will add the vocabulary to our notes ASAP. The only thing that you need to do maybe is look over the vocabulary, but I haven't had a chance to put it in the notes, so I'll do that as soon as I can. There's nothing specific you had to do. There is something you have to do, though, which is try the progress test for our last unit, Unit 13, on facts and figures. I will post it below. Remember, all the notes are always at the beginning of the class description. So if you go down to the previous class, you'll see the test is here. I haven't finished it yet, but it'll be done quickly. So later today, I'll post it here. So you should try that to see how much of Unit 13 you remember. Okay? So, any trouble entering the class? Because I see a lot of people out there, lots and lots of people out there, but no one's coming in. So I can't really start the class until you enter. Okay, if there's any trouble entering, meaning press the green button, just let me know. And in the meantime, hopefully our regular people will be in here too, and then I can get started. But new people, just press the green button right here and join the class. Okay, so there's no problem, Wellington, is that right? So there's no problem with the join button. Is there? If there is a problem, if you don't see the green button, please let me know. You should see the green join button here on the main page. Okay? It's okay. All right. So Donnie, to join the class, just click the green button on the main page. Okay, no problem. For some reason, our regulars are not here, which is very unusual. So that's why I can't begin. I have to have someone actually in the class, or I can't do it, because this is an interactive class. All right, what I can do is just do a little more review while I'm waiting, and hopefully someone will come in, okay? So yesterday, we started talking about culture. We began the vocabulary section called Working with Words, talking about cultural differences. I asked you two key questions. What this common piece of advice means: when in Rome, do as the Romans do. And basically, we decided that it means you have to adapt to a new culture. The second question was, how much should you adapt? How much do you change your behavior if you visit another country? For work or as a tourist? Is there a difference? So we had a few ideas about that. I wanted you to think about those ideas as we started to read the text, Working Across Cultures. Professor Gert Hofstede of the Netherlands came up with a classification system, a cultural classification system. So we talked about the classification system, and I asked you at the end of class to classify your culture. Was it hierarchical or egalitarian? Individualistic or collective? Masculine or feminine? Cautious or risk-taking? We had some other classifications too. In the last class, I talked about that, and I said I personally don't agree with these categories, especially masculine and feminine. I don't really know what that means. But it's not important. What's important is that we start to have a language to talk about culture. Later, we can use our own terms if we like. So, at the end of class, we talked about these key points before you talked about your own culture. And the trick now is to move on to the vocabulary. Okay, so while I'm waiting, I'll go over some of the questions we talked about. By the way, come on in if you're watching, plenty of room. if you can. If you're at work, I understand. No problem. So, cultural differences. From the article you read, I wanted to know if you do business with a different culture, what is useful to know about the culture? The article brought up many things. For example, what he called cautious cultures tend to be countries that have a very old history. So he said that the longer the history, the less, I guess the word could be impulsive country, or less risk-taking a country can be. I have a real problem with that explanation. I'd like to see some research about it, but it's an interesting idea. I don't know how true it is. So he mentioned Greece and Portugal as countries that are very cautious. My problem is, look at the news, especially with Greece, and tell me, is it because it's an old country with a history, or is it because it's a less economically powerful country? Is that why they're not willing or not able to change? So I don't know if I agree with his classifications, but it is an interesting idea, and it gives us a way to make a kind of map. Different cultures can fall into different categories. It gives us a way to discuss cultures. So what we need to do is just review the categories. So let's take a minute and do that. In the second question, we can review the categories. Which cultures think family life is important? So maybe there was more than one example here for family life. We know that the so-called cautious cultures were more conservative and maybe more based on family, maybe. But he also talked about the so-called feminine cultures, what he calls feminine cultures. So he mentioned Scandinavia, where work and life have to be balanced. So I think his answer for that, if I remember right, was Sweden, Finland, those kind of countries. And for a different reason, cautious countries may be in the south of Europe, in a different way for a different reason. So feminine and cautious, I think, is what he said. Okay. Which cultures like to be very polite to their manager or follow the rules and regulations? So from what I recall, let's take a look. He was talking about, I think he talked about Oriental cultures or Asian cultures. Let's double check. I think he was talking about Japan in particular. I think that's what he mentioned. And in the center, you can see hierarchical or egalitarian. So one example would be a hierarchical culture. The question is, like to be polite to their manager. Okay. So if it's hierarchical, right, at work, employees respect authority, don't usually take responsibility, and have a formal relationship with their manager. So he mentions, oh, not Japan, he mentions Malaysia and Indonesia. Okay, but it's something that it's a stereotype about Asian cultures, maybe. And then the opposite is liberal and egalitarian. Oh, look at that. We have someone. Koichi, how are you? Hello, Koichi? Hello, Koichi? Matsuo, can you hear me? I see you, but I do not hear you, Koichi. I hope I'm saying your name right. Okay, if you're having microphone problems, just write something in the chat window so I can see that everything's okay. So, hierarchical and egalitarian. So, in liberal countries, what he calls egalitarian countries, maybe we have what we call a more flat hierarchy. something like that. So that gives you some of the categories. Last question we covered yesterday was, in part 2, according to Hofstede, which cultures adapt easily to change? So think about that for a minute. If you were here yesterday, if you're following along, which cultures could adapt easily to change? Let's take a look. I recall that the last category was cautious or risk-taking. And what he called risk-taking cultures were cultures that had a younger history. So in the final paragraph, I think he talked a little bit about Singapore, Jamaica. I don't know why Singapore and Jamaica have a younger history than anywhere else. They have a different history, but he calls it a younger history. But he says that they're more willing to take changes, to make changes. My question is, okay, Singapore is a very big country. Jamaica is a bit smaller. Does it have something to do with the age or the age population? Does it have something to do with the political structure? It seems to me that these general categories are a little dangerous. Okay, but anyway, as I said, the important thing is that we have a language to discuss culture. So let's try this. We've got Mr. Odie back. That's a good sign. And Koichi, I think, is having some connection problems. Odie, can you hear me okay? Is your microphone working?
Yes. Can you hear
good.
me?
Yep. Any trouble entering the class today? Because it seems like everyone is blocked or something.
No.
Okay.
I don't have any trouble to join the class.
Okay, good. And Koichi, how are things working now?
Oh, hello?
There we go. Now I can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem, no problem. So, yesterday we read this text. Today we need to work on the vocabulary in the text. I want you to pick out the key words and use them. But the two of you were not in the class yesterday, right? Right.
Right.
Okay. So, I think what we need to do is, we've talked about I just reviewed the main categories, but I don't know if that's enough. We really need to read the text again to get the key words, okay? So, keep in mind what I said. We have hierarchical and egalitarian, what the author calls masculine and feminine, cautious and risk-taking. Let's read it again quickly, and at the end, what I want you to do is tell me if you agree with these categories. Okay? Are we cool? If we're cool, say cool.
Yes. Cool.
Cool. Koichi, cool?
Yeah, cool.
Excellent. Okay. Koichi, why don't you start us off on slide 4? Why don't you do the introduction for us? Okay? Do you want to read, Koichi?
Oh, sure.
Why don't you take the first part, the introduction and the first column, okay?
Okay. Could you tell me which part?
Well, you can start from the title and do all the way down the first column.
All right.
We'll take turns.
Yeah. Working across cultures, Professor Geert.
Oh, his name is Gert Hofstede. Gert Hofstede.
Hofstede of the Netherlands conducted a study of how values in the workplace are influenced by culture. His research, based on a large database of employees, values collected by IBM covers 74 countries and regions.
Keep going. Keep going, Koichi. Continue.
Oh, sure. Working, entertaining, negotiating, and corresponding with colleagues from different cultures can be quite difficult. One misunderstanding could have a negative effect on months of work. Understanding uh, intercultural differences can help communication with colleagues from other cultures. According to Hofstede, if we compare the key factors in our own culture with those in another culture, we can predict possible difficulties.
Okay, very good. Koichi, what do you think some of those key factors might be, in your opinion? So think about what he said so far. When we're talking about culture, what are some of the key factors that make up a culture? Remember, we're going to talk about it from the point of view of doing business. But first, let's start with a more general idea. In your opinion, what are some of those key factors? What do you think, Koichi? Is language an important part of culture?
No, I don't think so.
No?
I,
Wow,
yeah,
okay. Why not?
it's also, of course, it's also important factors. Uh, but I think mm, not verbal method uh, is important. So I mean, facial expressions or body language.
Okay, very good. So nonverbal communication is also really important. Let's call that nonverbal. By the way, you can see this in the chat window. Nonverbal communication is important. Okay, good. Anything else you would add?
Sorry, I have no ideas other than that.
Okay, but that's a good start. That's a good start. So let's see if we can pick out some other key factors as we read. Okay? So, Mr. Odie, let's talk about hierarchical or egalitarian, the next section.
Okay. Hierarchical and egalitarian.
Wait a second. Higher.
Hierarchical. Hierarchical.
Right.
Hierarchical or egalitarian. Some cultures like Malaysia and Indonesia are hierarchical. Oh my god, it's difficult to
Hierarchical.
hierarchical with a caste with a caste no with a caste or class system, and there is often a difference in wealth between individuals. At work, employees respect authority, don't usually take responsibility, and have a formal relationship with their manager. Other cultures like Australia and Denmark are more liberal and egalitarian. Managers give their employees responsibility and often socialize with them.
Okay, very good. So this talks about Indonesia. Do you agree with this category? This way of categorizing Indonesian society?
I don't agree 100%, but I think yeah, most of the most of the companies in Indonesia
Mm-hmm.
very have a formal relationships between uh, the manager, for example, and also their employees. But if it's international company, I don't think so, because I was work for an international company and it's not the same. And it's not the same. We are just like friends sometimes.
Mm-hmm. So there's a difference maybe between
There's a
what we
difference
call
between
national and
this
multinational.
internet.
Yeah, international
Yeah,
or
multinational.
multinational.
Yeah,
Maybe there's a difference. I'm going to say a difference in cultures. You can see that in the chat window, by the way.
yeah,
Okay. All right. So that's what I want to do. Look at the key factors. So Koichi mentioned body language, and here it's the whole organization of society or of a company, whether it's hierarchical, right, or uh, or so-called egalitarian. Oh, we lost Adi. Connection problems. Odie will be back. Okay, Koichi, let's read the next section on individualistic or collectivistic.
Sure. Individualistic or collectivist. Individualistic cultures such as the US and the Netherlands think that individual rights and freedom of speech are important. Personal goals, choices, and achievements are encouraged. In more collectivist cultures such as Korea and Colombia, this self-centered approach is discouraged. The group, such as the family, has a big influence on people's lives and is often seen as more important than business. Uh, Companies have a strong work group mentality, and the praise is given to teams rather than individuals.
Hmm. So, individualistic and collectivist. How would you classify your culture where you grew up, Koichi? Is it more individualist or more collectivist?
In Japan, we are more focusing on uh, collectiveness.
That's the idea that I get too. And and are you comfortable with that? Do you feel strange in another culture? Like if you've been to America, for example, it's very individualistic in America. Have you been there?
Yeah, and also in Japan, individualistic is mm, getting more popular.
So there's a change in the culture.
Yeah, that's right,
Mm.
especially in business.
And do you think it's a good thing?
No, I don't think
No.
so.
Okay. Why not? What's the problem? What's the danger?
Uh, 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 it sometimes uh, harms our relationship between colleagues.
hmm Well, how could it harm the relationship between colleagues? What do you mean exactly?
Uh, I mean, uh, sometimes a person think, uh, I mean, uh, uh, sometimes uh, maybe selfish.
Ah, okay. Now I understand.
Yeah, so we are working together. So I think it is important for us to mm, think about uh, think about all of us.
Okay, so maybe if it's too individualistic, we can lose sight of the group, we can lose sight of what's good for everyone in the organization. Maybe that's the danger. Okay, it's a good thing to keep in mind too. Let's talk about the most controversial one, Mr. Odie. Let's take a look at what he calls masculine or feminine.
In masculine societies like Brazil and Mexico, the male dominates the power structure. Competitiveness and assertiveness are encouraged, and
Wait,
the
wait.
accumulation
Assertiveness.
as- assertiveness
Good.
are encouraged, and the accumulations of wealth is important. Many employees live to work and take short holidays. In feminine societies such as
Such,
Sweden and
such as,
such,
such.
such,
You have to work on
such
the T and then the TCH. There's no T, but imagine there was a T after the U. Sutch. Such. Like that.
such
There you go.
such as Sweden and Finland. Family, personal relationships, and quality of life are more important. Conflicts are resolved through negotiation, and people work to live, enjoying longer holidays and flexible working hours.
There you go. So, I say this is controversial. I don't know if you agree with me. Are Mexico masculine and are countries like Sweden and Finland feminine? What do you think? I find that a bit controversial. I don't know. What do you think?
I think it is controversial too in Indonesia because a lot of women want the equality. The equality between men because they have the same skills or any other thing. So there is no masculine or feminine in our society.
Right.
We don't want to.
They have the same
Yes, it is
skills or even better skills,
yes,
but they
right.
don't have the opportunities. Yeah, I find it controversial because I just don't know what it means. I don't understand why Brazil is masculine and Sweden is feminine. I can tell you, I lived in Sweden for a while. Uh, there's definitely equality. There certainly appears to be. Um, but I mean, I don't know. Why would it be feminine? I don't like the fact that he says associating family life makes it feminine because in Brazil they don't have families. It seems strange. I have a problem with that. But
Yeah.
maybe we could find a better word. I think the idea is okay, but he's not being very clear about the category. My feeling.
Actually, I have a funny story about the feminine or masculine in my working place because
Yeah.
I was I was getting mad with my colleague, and she's a woman, and then I met with him. I met with her, and she said, "I'm just a woman. Why? I just a woman." And then I said to her, "But you want the equality between man and woman, right?" So I treat you as a man too.
So that means you can be nasty and abusive. No, no, no. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Well, what does equality mean? Because people are not the same, you know? Of course, people are not the
Yes.
same. So, what does it really mean? I think that uh, the problem here is that equal doesn't mean that we do the exact same thing. It's that we have the same opportunities, right?
That's right.
So, not the same opportunities for people being angry at us. I mean, the same opportunities professionally.
Yeah, that's a joke.
Yeah, she probably didn't find it very funny though.
Yes.
Exactly. All right, last part. Let me just read the last one. It's very short, and then we'll work on the vocabulary. Okay. Well, Koi T, why don't you take the last one? Cautious or risk-taking. Want to finish it up for us?
Uh, 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 do I read?
Yes, please.
Sure. Uh, Cautious or risk-taking. Some cultures, especially those with a long history, such as Greece and Portugal, are quite cautious. They often have religious backgrounds and resist new ideas. At work, people prefer to follow strict rules and do things as they always have been done. Other cultures, like Jamaica and Singapore, often have a younger history and are willing to take risks. They are more open to new ideas, are less accepting of rules and regulations, and are more likely to welcome change.
Hmm. What do you think about that idea? Do you agree with that? Do you think that
Uh,
sounds realistic, or do you think he's making a stereotype? What do you think?
uh, uh, I totally agree with that.
Okay. And what makes you say experience that makes you think?
Uh, yeah, I think these kind of things depends on their history.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so as for me, a Japanese uh, people, uh, in Japan, we have a little bit long history. So we think uh, traditional thing is very important.
Right.
Yeah, but
But
actually,
when I think
yeah,
of Japan, I think of innovation. You know, when
yeah,
I think of Japan, I think of change. It seems very modern, right? Am
yeah,
I-
right. So we can we can't fight against the progress of the technology.
Yeah, because when I read this, I get the sense that he's saying these countries, like Greece and Portugal, are trying to fight against progress. That's the impression that I get. That's why I just doesn't quite work for me. But I do see the point about having a long history, being resistant to change. I can kind of see it. But Japan has a huge history, and Japan is not resistant to change. At least I don't think so. Not what my experience tells me. By the way, I used the word stereotype earlier. Look in the chat window. Stereotype is a general idea about someone or something, but it's usually wrong. Just because everyone thinks it doesn't mean it's accurate. So for me, the last two are really stereotypes. But again, it's good for us to have a way to talk about culture. So it's a good start. But maybe we need to get beyond the stereotypes a little bit.
Mhm.
Let's focus on the vocabulary though. Let's take a look at the vocabulary. I want you first to identify some of the vocabulary. So what I've done is given you, um, well, it says match the adjectives in bold. So if you've got the presentation open, you can just flick through slides 4 and 5, and you'll notice those categories are also adjectives. And there's some others too. On slide 7, I've got definitions for you. How many of the adjectives can you name? Okay? So let's try it. Very polite. There's only 2 of you, so speak freely. Very polite. No.
Egalitarian.
Egalitarian. Does egalitarian mean polite, though? Egalitarian countries might be polite, but is that the right adjective? for polite.
Okay.
Take a look back here, especially on the first page. Look at those bold words.
Formal.
Yeah, formal. I think so too. Okay, so I'm going to keep this on screen, but feel free to go back and look at the text again. So, very polite, formal. Organized in levels. Are you thinking, Koichi?
Oh yeah, hierarchical.
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 That's right. Organized in levels, hierarchical. Hierarchical. 5 syllables. Hierarchical. The stress, hierarchical, hierarchical, hierarch. Stress is on the 3rd syllable. 3rd syllable. Hierarchical. Hierarchical.
Hierarchical.
That's right. And by the way, Frida Ponce, I agree with you. There are stereotypes in every culture. And the problem is, when I'm reading the article, what worries me about the text is that the great idea that he has to try to give us a vocabulary to talk about culture, it isn't accurate enough for us to really look at the cultures themselves. Like, it gets in the way. That's my problem. That's why I say I'm worried about stereotypes in it. But I like the fact that he's trying to give us a vocabulary to discuss culture, which will help us to do business. We can say, he's trying to say, oh, if you go to a cautious culture country, you have to be aware that you can't introduce change in a sudden way. You have to get them used to it first. So you might have a great idea, but they're not going to listen to you unless you present it in a way that they're used to. That kind of thing. So he's trying to do something useful. I'm just worried about the stereotypes a bit. Okay, back to the vocabulary. Number 1, very polite, is formal. Number 2, organized in levels, hierarchical. Number 3, classless. Odie, what do you think about this one? Classless. Classless. If you go to India, is India a classless society? It's very famous for being quite the opposite. You're born into a certain class or caste. By the way, all countries have classes, but I'm using that one because it's very famous for the caste system. So what's the opposite of class? What is classless? Think about the types of cultures we had. Take a look.
Collectivist, individualistic.
What do you think is the best one?
I think egalitarian.
Egalitarian. I think so too. I think you're right. So classless, or nearly classless, would be egalitarian. Everyone is equal. Egalitarian. What about careful? What's another way to say being careful? Maybe too careful. Puichi, what do you think?
Yeah, cautious.
Cautious. Receptive of new ideas, Odie.
Okay. Cautious.
Cautious for 4, and number 5, receptive of new ideas.
Liberal.
Liberal's a very good guess. There's a better word, but yes, liberal's a very good guess, actually. But take a look at number 6, allowing freedom. Is that liberal for number 6?
Yes.
It is. So number 5, we need a different word. We'll come back to it in a minute, unless you have an idea. Koichi, what would you say for number 5?
It's accepting.
Accepting. That's good, but there's a better choice for accepting later on, you're going to see. We'll come back to 5. Okay? Look at 7. Shared. by all the group. Boys, what do you think? Shared by all the group.
Collectivist.
Good. Collectivist culture shares everything. Number 8, must be obeyed. If you're in a hierarchical organization, the rules must be obeyed. The rules are very what?
Strict.
Very good. Strict. S-T-R-I-C-T. Strict. Number 9, do something without complaint. Your culture, in your culture, or your business culture, you do things without complaint. You just do them. You are very, what?
Accepting.
Accepting.
Accept.
Good. Don't forget the k sound. Accepting. Good. That's it. Number 10, focusing on one person. Your culture focuses on one person, not on many people.
Individual. Let me see. Individualistic.
So that leaves us with which answer for number 5? If you're not sure, let's take a quick look back. Do we see it here? Yes, we do. It's on this page.
It's open.
It's open. That's right. So just to summarize, formal, so very polite, formal, organizing levels, hierarchical, classless, egalitarian, careful, cautious, receptive of new ideas, open, allowing freedom, liberal, shared by all the group, collectivist, must be obeyed, strict, do something without complaint, accepting, and finally focusing on one person, individualistic. Okay? Let me just take a quick look. Oh my god, what is this? Oh, we got a lot to do. I didn't realize we had so much to do. Oh no. Let's see. Do we have time to do the listening today? Because otherwise we're going to be repeating it. Not really. We don't quite have time to do it, so I think we're going to have to hold that off till tomorrow's class. Okay, but let's end here. Discuss how each adjective in 4 could be both positive and negative. So let's see if we can get beyond the stereotypes a little bit, okay? Let's focus on those ideas. Formal, hierarchical, egalitarian, cautious, open, liberal, collectivist, strict, accepting, individualistic. And I'd like you to give me your opinion about how something that seems negative could actually be positive. You can talk about the other categories, masculine, feminine, cautious, risk-taking, or you can talk about these specific adjectives that we just described. Let me do one example for you. A lot of people would think of Japanese culture as being very formal. Maybe that's true, maybe that's not. But is the formality a bad thing? I would say maybe it's not such a bad thing in a way. Do you agree, Koichi? The formality in Japanese culture maybe has some good elements too. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so too. What do you think is a good aspect of being formal?
Especially when we meet someone for the first time.
Right.
I think it's better to behave politely.
Formally.
Yeah, formally.
Because that's our key word now, formally. Okay. Because?
Because we haven't known each other, so So
what might happen? What might happen? So
it is important to mm, to make the opponent comfortable.
good, good. So what might happen? We might offend them, because you can use keywords to speculate, like would, could, should, and might. We might offend them because we don't know the culture, so it's important to make the other person, not the opponent, Koichi, not the opponent, the other person.
Yeah.
Right? The opponent is when you're playing chess.
All right.
So here, the right word is the other person, like this. Not opponent, and I'll put that in the chat window to keep in mind. Whoops, where's my? There we go. Let's get. We've just a minute, Odie. Let's get one more idea. I want you to pick one of those adjectives from the list that we just went over, and I want you to talk about how it could be positive and negative. Talk about it in both sides. Okay, so which adjective can you talk about?
Liberal.
Liberal, good one. So tell me a little bit about how it can be positive and in other ways negative. The pros and the cons.
I hear you.
Tell me a little bit about the pros and cons of being liberal. A little bit.
My opinion for being liberal in a workplace, I think it is good for their creativity, but sometimes in company doesn't. Sometimes in a company has a diversity of the character, the individualistic of the employees.
The individualism.
The individualisms of the employees. Because they have different character. It sometimes when liberal systems cannot work with the employee who is very rebellious.
Okay, good. So in other words, if you're too liberal, if you're liberal, you might allow a kind of behavior that impedes the work, that gets in the way. Is that what you mean? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, it's an interesting idea. I disagree with you, but but I think I disagree only because I wonder if being liberal and allowing freedom means having no rules. I don't think it does. I don't think it does. But you might be right. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying I wonder if those two things are really separate. I think to have freedom, you have to have rules. The problem is it's the way people want to implement those rules. That's the issue. Liberal. What's wrong with? But anyway, let's do this because we're going to run out of time here. Let's stop at this point, and I want to expose you to lots and lots of vocabulary. Okay, so what I'd like to do is let's finish this tomorrow, and the first half of class. You're going to do a little bit of a listening activity. You're going to be listening for people talking about their own culture or the subject of culture, and I want you to listen to how they describe culture. I want you to focus on a more personal, more subjective set of adjectives. So we've got more sort of formal, business-like adjectives. Tomorrow I want you to listen for more personal ones, more subjective ones, when you're expressing a personal opinion, and some other keywords as well. And then around halfway through the class, after we've done the listening, we get the vocabulary, you are going to prepare some information for someone else from a different culture who is coming to work in your country. I'm sorry, in your company, you have to think about different ways to explain some of the aspects of your culture to them to get them used to the environment so that they are ready to go when they arrive. So you're going to be preparing them for a visit or a work exchange, something like that. Okay? So you'll be using the language you've learned in this class and into the beginning of tomorrow to make a little presentation for those people to get them ready to deal with your culture. Okay? Coming up tomorrow. I can also give you a little bit of homework later to practice some of the vocabulary we've done so far. Look for that later today. Okay? So, bye for now, everyone. I'll be back tomorrow at 9 GMT for speaking skills. We're finishing our unit on truth and lie, how to talk about truth and lies, how to do it. And then 10 GMT for the last part of the vocabulary section for this unit, which is culture in business. Bye for now, everyone. See you soon.
Thank you,
Bye
John.
for now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for your lesson.
Thank you.